Hello, everybody. Welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today, I was going to discuss the full moon or Purnima that's happening 12th of May, 2025. This talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. And it seems like the theme for this moment in time is executive decisions after loss. So let's take a look. Note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. Then you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. If you're new to Vedic astrology, Jyotish are my videos. All my teaching videos on the subject are in my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. My channel is all about playlists, so that different videos are easy to find on different topics. Like I have a planets grahas playlist, a houses bhavas playlist, and there are others. If you like to learn astrology by looking at famous birth charts, I have a list of all the famous birth charts I've analyzed on the channel, whether they're famous people, places, or moments in time. And you can find that information in the birth chart archive list 2025 video, which I just updated. Okay, so that's up and live for you. If you've been following along mostly, but maybe you missed the last few teaching videos, the last 3 teaching videos I've posted are Libra constellation or Tula rashi, mantras for the sun or Surya, and then Scorpio constellation or Vishaka rashi. And if you're new to all this and wondering where you can start, I have a list at the bottom of the slide of foundational videos that should help set you up and create a nice again a foundation for you if you're just starting out learning Vedic astrology. You can check those out. Okay, so here's the chart for the full moon on the 12th of May, which is happening 12:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or New York time. And yeah, so if you're not familiar, this is North Indian style chart. That's the kind of chart I use in my work. And to orient you, the top square in the middle has a little 5 in the bottom corner. You can mostly see it's almost covered up with all these lines, but top diamond in the middle is what we call the ascendant, rising sign, first house, or lagna in Sanskrit. So you're going to hear lagna quite a few times. So that's the first house. And then to get to the other houses, you count counterclockwise inclusively. So to get to the second house, you go from the first house at the very top, kind of backwards or up to the left corner there. It's like a upside down triangle. There's a little 6 in the bottom corner. That's the second house. And then you go around through all 12 houses. So the 5 in the bottom corner of the lagna there, that 5 is the first house. So the 5 doesn't indicate the first house, but the 5 indicates the 5th constellation of the zodiac, which is Leo or Simha in Vedic astrology. So it's a Leo rising or Simha lagna chart. Okay, so let's get into some of the details here or to orient the chart. So the day lord is moon, and the Hara lord or hour lord is also moon. So that tells us a lot already. So the moon it symbolizes things like the public. It symbolizes things like the intuition, the intuitive mind, the feeling mind. It can symbolize women. And so you can see the moon is in the 3rd house here. And you can see the moon because the moon is the fastest moving planet. So the moon shifts through every sign in about 2.5 days. And you can see the moon is at about 28 degrees. And so within a few hours of this chart, actually the moon is going to slip into Scorpio where it's debilitated. Now the thing though is that might sound like not a great thing, but the thing is that once moon moves into Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars, you can see Mars is in the 12th house in the upper right corner, and Mars is in Cancer, which is ruled by Moon. So in a couple hours, you're going to have a parivartana between Mars and Moon. So parivartana yoga means a combination, planetary combination, usually a planetary combination, and parivartana means exchange of houses. So when Moon moves into Scorpio and Mars is currently in Cancer for a while, you can essentially swap those two, and they make both houses stronger. So yeah, but at the moment, Moon is in the 3rd house. So the 3rd house is related to siblings. It's related to courage. It's related to neighbors. It's related to dexterity. Yeah, and because it's also getting close to the line of crossing over into Scorpio, I would consider this to be, I usually take planets that are within 2 degrees. Technically, it's 1 degree, but I usually take it within 2 degrees of especially fast moving planets or slow, well, both actually, fast and slow moving planets. But I usually take it within 2 degrees because when a planet is about to cross into another sign, it's inherently unstable because each sign has a different element associated with it. So right now, Moon is in Libra, Libra's an air sign. And then once the moon moves into Scorpio, Scorpio is a water sign. So you're moving from air to water. And air is related to thoughts and thinking, and decisions, and water is related to emotions. So you're going from more of the thought realm, especially since it's the mind, to a more emotional space. Okay. So yes, the moon will be debilitated in Scorpio, but because there'll be a parivartana with Mars, that'll make it stronger. And it'll also make Mars stronger because Mars is debilitated in Cancer in the 12th house. And the 12th house is related to losses, expenditures, international, foreign, remote places, that sort of thing. So, and because Mars is in that house, it's going to be drawing energy from the 4th house because it owns Scorpio, which is in the 4th house. It's also going to be drawing energy from the 9th house. And it happens that the 4th house is related to property, home, lineage, and mom. And the 9th house is related to institution, boss, government, and father. So because Mars is debilitated in the 12th house, there could be this particular moment, not before before the parivartana happens in a few hours, um, there can be losses from both parents, mom and dad, okay, or home and institution. Yeah. So there's a dual loss going on here. You know, luckily Mars is in a pretty nice nakshatra. So nakshatras are called lunar mansions. There are about 27 of them. Every night the moon passes through a different one, and they all have different energies. So Mars luckily is in a pretty nice nakshatra. The nakshatra is called Pusha, and Pusha is symbolized by a cow's udder. So there's a lot of like nurturing, you know, it's like you think of milk. So nurturing and stabilizing and, you know, type of energy, which is nice. But since Mars is debilitated, it can be that efforts to stabilize or nurture 4th house issues such as property, home, mom, or 9th house issues such as father, government, institution, or even religion. Um, there can be a drain on that, like the actions aren't really, you know, kind of working out or panning out or, you know, paying off the way one would hope. Okay. And so for that reason, you know, so already I'm picking up here just from this is that there's something to do with losses, especially because, again, the 3rd house is also, the 12th house is considered a house of loss, but the 3rd and a negative house, but the 3rd house is also considered to be a mildly negative house as well. And that's where the moon is. And again, the moon is unstable. So the moon, let's see, the moon is in the nakshatra of Vishaka. So that's another thing is that the Vishaka nakshatra is symbolized by a victory gate. And there are several nakshatras that are related to victory, but Vishaka is more like a victory at all costs. Okay, so there's some fighting energy going on here. Okay, just already we can see that, and we'll see more of it. But Mars is also a fighting planet. It's Mars is related to the head, you know, commander in chief of the army. So, you know, if that gives you any indication. But Mars, you know, especially when it's out of balance, can indicate things like violence and aggression and that sort of thing. And Moon is in the nakshatra of Vishaka, so it's like winning at all costs, even potentially to self. So this might again be that like there's been a lot of actions taken that have actually not really gotten very far, and maybe have even been a drain. Okay, but there's this fighting energy that's coming on present here in this. Okay, the other thing is that let's see what's on the moon. The other thing is that even though Moon is not in Scorpio at the moment, Mars is aspecting the moon in the 3rd house, 12th house, because Mars has a four house. One of its aspects is 4 houses away. So even before Moon gets into Scorpio, which can be a very intense emotional type of thing, type of placement, and it's going to be in parivartana with Mars. So right now, even before then, Mars is aspecting Moon. So Moon is going to be picking up this. I would say, again, luckily Mars is in Pusha, because the nakshatra after Pusha is a shlesha, which is symbolized by a snake. So that's definitely more like aggression, and like, sudden, aggressive, hissing, biting type energy. But either way, there's some irritation going on, agitation here, and it's probably due to these losses of like trying to stabilize things that are hard to stabilize, especially related to fourth and ninth house issues. Okay. And so there can be a drain potentially on the native here. So besides the Mars aspecting on Moon, which will Mars is a fiery planet, so there's going to be energy here, leadership here, organization here, potentially a little bit of or at least a start to formation of something. Mars is an erratic planet, and sometimes the problem with Mars is that it doesn't have a lot of follow through, so it can start something and complete it, especially with Mars and the 12th house debilitated. Probably that's the case. Like it might be like a start stop or but lack of completion type of energy. But in addition to Mars on the Moon, you have Sun, which is exalted in the ninth house, aspecting the Moon. And Sun is another fiery planet, also very energetic, active. And Sun represents the president, the king, father, wealth. So it looks pretty strong in the ninth house. There are issues with it, which we'll talk about later. But Sun is, looks pretty strong in the ninth house. One of the issues with Sun is that it's what we call a karako bhavanasha Sun. So since Sun symbolizes father as a planet and the ninth house symbolizes father as a house, when you have Sun in the ninth house, that can actually indicate, seems like it would be a good thing, especially with Sun exalted. And it's good that Sun is exalted, better than not, but um, Sun in the ninth house indicates problems or issues with father. Not necessarily between the native and the father or boss, government, but yeah, it might be that like the father is having issues on their own. Like maybe there's a great relationship with father, but father has health issues or financial issues or that sort of thing. And it seems like, again, Mars is not only the lord of the fourth house for mom, but it's lord of the ninth house for father, government, authority, religion. So there's some sort of loss going on, from the ninth house. Okay. But since Sun is exalted in the ninth house, that also means that, again, there's more energy, leadership energy, trying to ameliorate the situation here. Okay. Now, in a global, literally global context, I just did a new moon video like 2 weeks ago, and it was interesting that it was also a Leo lugna. So there's a lot of similarities with the chart from 2 weeks ago and this one. But one of the big things that's not here is that actually Moon was with, since it was a new moon, Moon was in the ninth house with Sun. Sun was still exalted, but there was a parivartana between Mars and Moon, but protecting the ninth house. And we also have Jupiter and Venus on either side of the Sun. That creates a lot of positive energy, including what we call a Kartari yoga. So Kartari yoga, it's, I think, literally translated as a good scissors yoga, because Jupiter and Venus are the two great benefics. It's like cutting through all the obstacles that the Sun might have. Okay, so it's a strong Sun, and then cutting through obstacles. And during that time, when that's been going on, because Sun has been in this position since, I think, the 14th of April or so, getting close to a full month, because you can see Sun's about to leave Aries here. We've had a lot of new leaders step up. We have a new Pope. Canada has a new PM. Australia has a new leader. Germany has a new leader. So you can see like all these like new heads of state have been popping up. Like boom, here they come. So there's a new crop of them. So that's not too surprising with this kind of energy going on here. Okay, but during the new moon, the parivartana was happening between the 12th house of losses and the ninth house. But right at this particular moment, there is no parivartana, so we've lost that protection. The other thing is you can see Sun is at about 28 degrees here. Sun in a couple days after this is moving into Taurus. So less strength for Sun-related issues, frankly. Including, it helped this kind of configuration with Sun flanked by two great benefics. The two great benefics helped people get into position, but then it's like now it's time to roll up your sleeves and get the work done. Like it helped with the elections, but now it's like, okay, what's the real work to be done? Okay. The other thing is that the Sun, so talking about more kind of aggressive fighting energy, the Sun is in a nakshatra called Kritika. Kritika is a dual nakshatra. Symbol, the deity associated with Kritika is Kartikeya, the commander-in-chief of the celestial army. So that tells you something, right? It is a dual nakshatra because Kritika also can symbolize things like fostering and nurturing, sort of like Pusha, because Kartikeya was raised by several foster mothers. So there's some, again, dual fighting, nurturing energy going on with executive functions. Okay. The other thing is that Sun is now with Mercury. Mercury, when I did the new moon video a couple weeks ago, was in the 8th house, debilitated in the 8th house with Rahu, Saturn, and Venus. And now you can see Mercury's popped up onto the scene. And Mercury there symbolizes the rational mind, logical mind, decision making, communication. Yeah. And Mercury is the lord of both the 2nd house of oral communication, and it's also lord of the 11th house of clubs, groups, society, and also income. And the 2nd house is also assets. So we're looking at communication, we're looking at decision making, we're looking at sorting things through, we're looking at organizing things, getting things in order, both in terms of groups of people, but also assets. So human resources and assets both. So executive would be the Sun exalted here, and decision making would be Mercury. So there's executive decisions that need to be made after losses. Okay, because part of the reason why there was like a big push, at least in Canada, they outed the last PM Trudeau. I guess they didn't like the way he was handling things, and then the similar kind of thing, like there was a loss of vote of confidence in Germany. That's why they had a new person placed in top position there. And then the Pope, well, he passed away, so that was a physical passing of somebody. But even like I was talking with some of my neighbors. It was pretty fast how quick they elected the new pope. Because that process with the cardinals can last. It has in previous times lasted weeks or months, but I think within a day or two, all these popes had decided they needed like 90 cardinals to okay the new elected pope, and within a day or two they did that. So I was like, wow, sounds like they knew who they wanted before they walked in there. It was probably just sounds like it was just like going through the motions, but who knows what their actual process was. It sounded like it happened pretty fast. So anyway, all these new leaders popped up. They got to do the real work, the day-to-day work. Yeah, so the other thing is that the 3rd house here, getting back to the moon, 3rd house relates to siblings, but it also relates to neighbors. And so, yeah, there can be here like when we start putting these energies together, like Moon and Vishaka, Mars and Pusha, Sun and Kritika, Mercury and Ashwini. Oh, I didn't mention Ashwini. Ashwini is a nakshatra symbolized by the Kumara twins, which are the celestial healers. So they're riding around on horses, a hero type, going around rescuing people and that sort of thing. So there's this energy of rescuing, fighting, nurturing, um, neighbors, firepower, and then also mentally, if not physically, mentally, but probably physically as well, because Mars is there. Mars is a physical planet. So, and then Mars also represents enemies. So it could be like a rescuing, fighting to win over enemies, or kind of energy is what we're picking up so far. Then the dasha period, that's the planetary period. These planets are, you can kind of think of them as more active or more influential when the dasha period is running. So currently we have running Jupiter, Venus, Saturn. So Jupiter and Venus are the two advisor planets. Jupiter is a spiritual advisor, Venus is a worldly advisor, and Saturn is a planet of obstacles, delays, chronic issues, and death, destruction. So, yeah, and you can see Saturn is not only a planet that represents those things, but is in the eighth house, which is basically the Saturn we would call the bhava karaka, the house symbol of those things like chronic illness, death, destruction, and is in that house. So it's very strong. Like it brings out even more of that negative energy or destructive energy of Saturn. Okay. Saturn's sitting in the eighth house here, and it's aspecting the 10th house, where Jupiter's sitting. And there's actually a parivartana exchange of houses between Venus and Jupiter. Okay. So at the moment, Saturn is in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. So it's going to slow down, or create even more obstacles for eighth house issues, which is usually not what people want because the eighth house is already pretty intense with those sorts of things. And Saturn is with Venus, so it's going to slow down Venusian energy. And Venus symbolizes, again, the practical advisor, social grace, finer things of life. And then when parivartana, that means Jupiter's basically in the eighth house as well. So Saturn's also going to be slowing down Jupiterian energy. So justice, balance, fairness, compassion, generosity. I always think of Jupiter as like Santa Claus. Yeah, so slowing down Santa Claus, delivering all the goodies. And then Saturn is not only with Venus and with Jupiter through parivartana, and this is all happening in a Jupiterian sign. So there will be some protection because Jupiter's aspecting its own sign through parivartana. But Saturn is also aspecting Jupiter in a sign of Venus or Taurus in the 10th house. And so again, Saturn is on Jupiter and Venus, both in the 8th house and the 10th house. And Saturn is also aspecting Virgo in the 2nd house and another Jupiterian sign of Sagittarius in the 5th house. The 5th house also represents counseling and advice. So Saturn's really slowing down advice and advising right now, getting good advice, probably to make these executive decisions to deal with whatever losses are going on. Okay. Also, Jupiter and Venus also represent finance. Like Jupiter represents banking, Venus again, luxury items, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a little bit of a slug right now with that going on. Okay. So let's see. What did I put here? Delayed advice and long suffering. So the other thing is that I said long suffering because Saturn is in the 8th house, and 8th house is suffering, long suffering, but Saturn is also the lord of the 6th house of acute issues. So the lord of the 6th house has gone to the 8th house. So that means that maybe there was some kind of thing that seemed like it was just going to be a temporary issue or temporary problem, but now it's becoming more of a chronic problem. Okay. The other thing is Venus represents relationships, especially spouse-like partner. And Saturn is the lord of the 7th house of relationships, business partners, spouse. So since the 7th lord has gone to the 8th, problems potentially cropping up there. And Saturn is not only, again, the owner of that house, and it's gone to a negative house, but Venus is the bhava karaka for the 7th house. So, because Venus represents spouse. So there can be personal or professional relationship issues going on here. Also, the 7th house relates to the path in life. So delays, obstacles, that sort of thing. And Mars is trying to help out here because Mars, again, in Pusha, trying to nurture, stabilize, but debilitated. Mars is aspecting the 7th house, so there's probably some attempts here. But again, how far that's actually going at the moment, sure. unclear. Probably not too far at the moment. Okay, so what else do we have here? So the dasha period of Jupiter, Venus, Saturn is switching to Jupiter, Venus, Mercury on 8th of October 2025. So we're moving from the Saturnian energy of delays and obstacles to Mercurial energy. So Mercury, again, at this particular moment, May 12th is in Ashwini, so there's some sort of, decision or thoughts of like rescuing, repairing. But it's a fast-moving planet. So by the time October rolls around, actually Mercury is going to be on the other side of the chart in Libra. Okay. What's kind of nice about that is that by that time, Venus will be on the other side of the chart in Virgo. So you're going to have a parivartana between Venus and Mercury in October. So that should be pretty nice because that means you're going to have Venus and Mercury all over the chart, and those are usually benefic. Venus is always benefic. Mercury sometimes is, depending on what it's with. But that's going to improve because you'll have a parivartana between the second house and the third house. The second and third houses are going to get stronger. Second house, oral communication, family, inner circle assets. Third house, siblings, neighbors, courage, dexterity, classical arts, manual arts, artisan type stuff. So, because again, there's some challenged energy in those houses. So it looks like at this time, there's some executive decisions, that are important to make because of previous losses. But by the time October rolls around, which is again what, June, July, August, September, October, 5 months, almost half a year away, things looks like they're gonna, improve, get more organized, bring more diplomacy, that sort of thing. To again, Leo rising charts, Leo rising house, like whatever is Leo for you in your chart. Yeah. There should be some, there's some power now because Sun, the ruler of Leo, is exalted. And again, you have the Shubh Kartri yoga, Jupiter and Venus flanking Sun. But you can see, just like Moon is going to slip into Scorpio in a couple hours, in a couple days, Sun is slipping out of this exalted position. So the Sun won't be as strong. Okay, so what else do we have here? So the Lagna nakshatra is a Maga. So Maga is symbolized as that nakshatra is symbolized by a throne. So you get leadership energy, again, royalty energy, but also Maga. That's related to the heart, the star Regulus, which is the heart of the lion in the Leo constellation. But Maga is also the place in the sky where ancestors are thought to reside. So, again, that might be indicating more of like a fatherly energy here, or, it could be like a spiritual, ancestor, spiritual lineage type thing that's going on here. Yeah, but leadership and ancestors, you can kind of pick up more of that energy. Moon, we talked about in Vishaka, winning at all costs. Sun, we talked about in Kritika, fighting and nurturing, maybe both simultaneously. When Sun is in Aries, because Aries is a movable fire sign, you get more action, and Sun is an active planet, so there's been a lot of action, probably a lot more fighting. And so once Sun moves into Taurus in a couple days, that's going to be about, again, getting grounded and realistic, and that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of all these, like, high ideals and promises and activity. It's like, okay, what are we actually going to accomplish here for real? Okay, so a little bit of context otherwise. So I've mentioned, Moon is Sunday, again, unstable because it's in the last 2 degrees of, what is it, Libra here. Sun is also Sunday because it's in the last 2 degrees of Aries, but you can also see Ketu and Rahu are in the last 20 minutes of their signs, and Jupiter also is in the last degree. So we have 5 out of 9 classic planets here that are Sunday. That's going to bring a lot of instability to this moment in time. Okay, if this is like, I think I've mentioned, when I've seen people's charts, that even though there's clearly some strength here, when I've seen people's charts that have 3, 4, 5 or more planets that are Sunday, usually that person is quite unstable. Just sort of generally, physically, maybe medically, maybe psychologically. So yeah, so there's a big shift going on here. And then again, Ketu and Rahu, Jupiter, those are all slow-moving planets. Jupiter's shifting signs a few days after, 2 days after this as well. So I think Sun and Jupiter are both shifting on the same day, I think on the 14th. So Jupiter's shifting, and Jupiter only shifts signs every year. And then Rahu and Ketu only shift signs every year and a half. So, and they're moving, shifting on May 18th. Yeah, so within a week, we're going to have 3 slow-moving planets shift and the sun shift. Saturn shifted March 29th. So I've been talking about, this is going to be a pretty, sort of game board shifting time for all of us. Because again, when these planets shift, they're naturally going to move energy to new places in our life. So our focus and priorities can often change. I've also mentioned, like, sometimes, like, when big shifts like this happen, big changes in people's life can happen, or like relationships sort of suddenly up or go away. Um, you know, uh, and not because like anything was said or done necessarily, but it's just everybody's planets are shifting. And so it's like, oh, it's like I'm running Jupiter, and now Jupiter's in whatever Jupiter. Like if you're running Jupiter, Jupiter in Taurus, you've probably been dealing with like building like material gains and wealth and stuff like that. Like literally might be like building a garden or farm. And then now moving into Gemini, it's going to be all about generating ideas, and maybe multiple ideas, and maybe difficult decisions needing to be made. So it's just a different, it's just what happens, and it's not personal. Okay, so quite again, a lot of instability in his chart, despite some apparent strengths. Vesak is also happening on this day. Vesak is a Buddhist observation day of the Buddha's life and contribution to us spiritually. So that again, that kind of picks up some of the spiritual energy. In the United States, May 12th is also, is it May 12th? May 11th, sorry, is Sunday before this day. It's Mother's Day. So again, bringing more, and again, Mother's Day, I would start thinking about, again, the moon, which we're seeing a lot of already in terms of its energy. But again, we're also picking up a lot of the 4th house energy here, which represents mom as well. So yeah, so a lot of shifts and changes and work to be done. Let's go through house by house and see what we see. So again, the Lugna, Leo, Simha rising, or Leo rising, or Simha Lugna, fixed fire sign. A lot of this is like Leo people tend to be people who, they're very active and they're very steady in their actions, so they don't tend to deviate very much. So in that way, they're fairly predictable, typically. And Leo people generally, just like the sun, a lot of things revolve around the sun, even though it seems like the sun kind of, goes through cycles with the planet Earth. There's this natural tendency for people to sort of revolve around the sun, and people revolve around Leo. There's just this sort of natural dynamic that tends to happen there. So a lot of Leos tend to be in leadership positions. Let's see. And Leo, again, is exalted here. So there's a strong Lugna. Brings strength to the Lugna. The Lugna first house indicates just a general physicality of somebody, but also general personality. First house indicates like kind of a first view, or kind of most general view that people have of somebody. It may not give you a lot of depth, physically or psychologically into somebody. But it's kind of a, again, first pass of getting to know somebody. So again, the sun is exalted, but karaka, bhava, nasha, and kritika, it's gone to the 9th house, which is dharmasthana. So, and dharmasthana is related to duty. So when in a Leo Lugna chart, if the sun has gone to a dharmasthana, usually somebody's primarily motivated by duty. And then it's with Mercury and Ashwini. So again, that's a analytical, organizing, logical mind type principle in communication. So executive decisions on, again, it looks like saving finances because again, Mercury is going to bring 11th house and second house issues to the ninth house. And those are both the money houses. So especially in a Leo chart, I mentioned before, Mercury, the strength of Mercury is really key to understanding financial matters for Leo rising folks. And here, actually, like the U.S. president, current U.S. president, President Trump, he's a Leo rising. And so, you can kind of think about him a little bit if you want to. And, he's in a bit of a trouble because he's been fairly aggressive with putting out new trade policies and that sort of thing. And so um, I think, but his approval ratings in the public have really plummeted. So now he's sort of backtracking as much as he does. He doesn't always tend to backtrack much because he's a Leo rising again, steady actions. But you could even see for him, he's probably fairly concerned because, like, when he got elected president, Saturn was in the seventh house, and Saturn owns Aquarius, which is in the seventh house. So the seventh house for him specifically would be his constituency base, very strong, and that's what voted him. Part of what voted him in presidency. But you can see now his seventh house of partnerships, business partnerships, has gone to the eighth house of chronic problems, delays, obstacles, death, destruction, bankruptcy, that sort of thing. So, if you wanted to see this as a transit chart for him, you can see he's in a bit of trouble and he's trying to dig himself out. And the thing though is Saturn is going to be here for 3 years. So most of his presidency, if he, fulfills the 4 years of the presidency, and then for better or worse, Saturn is going to move into Aries, where it's debilitated. So, he personally, but Leos in general, are going to have problems, with seventh house issues. Um, and then again, the Mercury here, if we're still talking about President Trump, 11th house issues, club groups, societies, a lot of clubs and groups and institutions are protesting him and his political moves. And then again, a lot of it's about money, income, also higher education. He's starting to go after some higher education, some colleges and universities and stuff like that, trying to get them to, abide by certain new policies he's installed or implemented, and they're pushing back. So you can see some of that, tension here. Yeah. So, so there you go. So anyway, moving on from that. In general, just there's beyond just the current U.S. president. For anything related to your Leo house. Okay, there's some executive decisions, probably related to financing, also public support. That's again the 11th house issues coming in there, and the second house issues because Mercury's drawing 11th and second house energy into the ninth house here. Losses and trouble through leadership and institutions. There has been a surge of power here, but you can see that because the sun is about to move out of its exaltation position in a couple days, there's losses here, or there will be a loss of power here. Okay. Also, leadership, institution. Yeah, so losses through leadership, institution, lineage, and home. This is the Mars. It's the owner, ruler, advisor of the ninth house. So there's some losses related to, ninth house issues, government, institution, father, authority, and also fourth house issues, mom, property, home, lineage, or even spiritual lineage. So yeah. We've been talking about the debilitated Mars and Pusha. The other thing is it might be this Mercury, because Mercury is also related to the second house, and other second house issues are like oral communication. This could be trying to find kind of almost scrambling a little bit, like trying to find the right words to say to get things back on track. But it could be like a little bit deceptive, or I don't know, dual in nature, because again, the second house of oral communication is Virgo, which is an earth sign, so it's practical, but it's dual in nature. And there's also Ketu there, 'cause that's a south node of the moon. So that's going to be like a hidden, unexpected energy. Um, so whatever is being said here, I don't think is a full story. So this could be, again, like publicity, or what do they call it? Public image managing and stuff like that. It could be like at that level, like where like words are being said or sorted through to kind of rescue the situation, but like you can see, even though there's strengths, like if you go from Leo, the ruler of Leo is Sun, Sun's exalted. That sounds kind of good, but it's Sunday, so it's not going to be strong for very long. But in this moment, it's strong. But then if you look at the dispositor of Sun, it's this, debilitated Mars in the 12th house. So on the more superficial level, it looks like there's power, but you can see there's also this drain. Also, again, the 12th house is not losses, expenditures, international trade. So you can see how that works, for the United States currently. So what else do we have here? Finding the right words to save a divided situation or crowd. That's the other thing, is so Mercury is a dual sign, and it's a dual for the 11th house of clubs, group, society, income, and also the second house of inner circle, um, speech, assets. So, it's like trying to sort through all this, um, trying to bring order to chaos, because there's more, at least in the United States, more chaos coming up around this, because people are getting, I don't know, not agreeing, or impatient, or, disheartened, or whatever. People are generally, at least the polls are indicating people are not happy, and more people are protesting government actions. So, let's see. Oh, okay, so this is also related to finding a new structure for counseling. So this is related to Saturn with Venus and Jupiter. So Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter are in the 8th house of deep psychology. So finding some new structural ways of advisement here, even though there are delays and obstacles, and probably, frankly, bad advice, or destructive advice. And then you see Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter. And again, these are the planets we're also running. Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter, again, in the 10th house of daily actions. So there's like a psychological effort here. There's a daily work, effort here to consult through these losses. And then you have Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn again in the second house of assets and speech. So you can see how, like over and over, like you can see how there's this fight going on here. Like even if it's an internal fight of like, what do we do to fix this? Yeah. What's been going on. So it could also be like literal new structure of counseling, because again, with all these new like heads of organizations like Pope and PM for Canada, Australia, Germany, um, they usually bring in new people. So it's not just them that's changing, but then the people, their advisors, so they're picking their cabinet and their close people that are helping them, giving them information or advice or whatever. Um, all this Saturn, Venus, Sun, or Saturn, Venus, Jupiter energy in the second house too, and on the 2-8 axis here, there's been a lot of contemplation, and now it's like we're starting to talk about what we decided on. And then once Sun moves into Taurus, it's about how do we actually make it happen. So we have the idea, we've announced the idea, and now it's like, how do we implement the idea? Yeah, so we're kind of going through that process here in this chart. So besides the other yogas here, besides Jupiter, Venus, parivartana, there's the kuja dosha. That's Mars in the 12th house. That can indicate problems with relationships, and we've been seeing that several times over. the Saturn is the Lord of the 7th house has gone to the 8th, and then it's also with Venus, um, indicator, planet indicator, graha karaka for relationships. Buddha Ditya Yoga. So there's some intelligence going on here, involved here, because Sun and Mercury together, and there's a relationship with them, and especially, and it's qualified because there's a relationship with those two planets in the 1st and 2nd house. So there's some like calculation. This kind of intelligence, Buddha Ditya intelligence, more like a math science calculation type intelligence. There's ambition going on here. There's a Kala Sarpa yoga. There's a Shubhayachari yoga. So, and a Shubhakartari going on around the sun. So Jupiter and Venus on either side of the sun creates two different yogas, which are both quite positive. The Shubhayachari, which they just generally support the sun, and the Shubhakartari, which is the positive scissors cutting through any obstacles. So those are both quite good. Then we also potentially, I have it in question mark here, we may actually have a Shrikant yoga, which is spirituality yoga. That's because the lugna is strong, the sun is strong, and the moon is not very strong right now. Because you need all three. You need a strong lugna, sun, and moon to get a Shrikant yoga. But within a couple hours, you will get your Shrikant yoga because the moon will shift into Scorpio or it's debilitated, but then it's going to be in parivartana with Mars. So that may also again bring more spirituality. And again, the sun, exalted sun, is in the 9th house of religion and spirituality. So there's some spiritual elements, to this whole thing going on here. So these different yogas are going to bring strength, advice, trouble with relationships, intelligence, ambition, supporting administration, career purpose, breaking through obstacles, spirituality. But also within this whole, again, general first pass at the chart, losing power, shifting priorities, issues with long-term partnerships. I would say there's also going to be a surge in generating new ideological partners. The reason why is that this Rahu, it's shifting, that's in the last degree of Pisces here. Within a week, Rahu is going to be in the 7th house. Rahu is a planet indicating ambition. So especially for any Leo rising folks that are running Rahu, there's probably going to be a big shift. And so you're going to have, at least for a while, Rahu and Mars both in or aspect in the 7th house of spouse-like partner, business, independent business relationships. So that's going to be like a really like almost obsessive time about 7th house issues. Trying to recover, I think, the losses that have happened here. So, yeah. What else do we have? Again, we talked about loss of the divided fan base and finances. Again, that's 11th house and 2nd house, both ruled by Mercury, a dual sign, dual planet. And then the chidra grahas for this chart. So chidra grahas are planets of vulnerability. They can indicate sensitive spots or weak spots for somebody, Achilles heel, that kind of thing. So for this chart, Sun, which we've been talking about, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. And we're running Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. So there's a lot of hits being taken here. Even if it may not seem obvious, even if on the surface it seems like there's strong leadership, there's a lot of hits being taken here. And then again, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn, those three planets that we're running and their chidra grahas are related to 2nd house, 3rd house, even the 1st house because it's a Leo lugna. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. What, 2/3 of the chart, 3/4 of the chart? That's a lot of hits being taken here. So, and then if we look at a yogi, aviyogi, duplicate yogi, these are indications, some indications of wealth or lack of wealth. So the yogi and duplicate yogi, Jupiter and Saturn, so those indicate wealth, and the aviyogi sun. So even though there's power here, again, you're already seeing there's like some sort of probably financial loss or financial decisions being made here. Because the sun, even though it's powerful, this might be somebody who has power but not money. So again, if it's some sort of head of state, maybe it's like because of the decisions they made, they're losing their constituency base, and because of that, they're also losing, financial support as well. So they got to maybe make some different decisions to keep their seat. So okay, so let's look at the other houses. So the second house lord is Mercury, and we've got a Sun KT there in Uttara Phalguni. So Uttara Phalguni is about one of the finer things of life, enjoyment of life, but with a purpose. So, but again, K2 energy is hidden unexpected energy. So there can be sudden shifts or improvements related to, sudden unexpected hits or boosts, related to this. Then we have Jupiter. Oh, so the second house is also aspected by Jupiter. Jupiter's in Mrigashirsha. So Mrigashirsha brings, that nakshatra brings a seeking, searching energy. So we're looking for balance, looking for, justice, looking for balance of finances potentially. And then we also have an exalted Venus aspecting there, but Venus is debilitated in Virgo. So, probably not the best practical, even though it's a practical sign, probably not the best practical advice or even like social advice necessarily, but like very clean and organized, cleaning it up, like a Marie Kondo, feng shuiing, or vastu shastraing, a place like cleaning up the energy, cleaning things up. And Saturn, the exalted Venus and Saturn, those are both an Uttara Bhadrapada nakshatra. So symbol of that is a back leg of a funeral pyre. So this is sort of like taking some objective stance after something has been lost, destroyed, which again, we're getting more of that energy. So again, putting this all together, seeking balance after loss, organizing, healing, the inner circle assets. This could also be nutritional counseling, frankly, because the second house also is related to food intake. And so with Jupiter and Venus both aspecting the second house, and Saturn as well, there can be some sort of like reorganization or counseling related to food, like nutritional counseling. And it's kind of interesting. Like as I was going through this chart, analyzing it, I just had a patient come in the office for nutritional counseling. Actually, specifically, almost everybody gets nutritional counseling in my office, but specifically, that's what they wanted because this gentleman has colon cancer. And we'll talk about the eighth house, but you can see, we'll talk about the eighth house more, but with Rahu, Saturn, and Venus in the eighth house here, this could be somebody who's having some sort of growth, like, or, unusual growth in the sexual system or elimination system. So this gentleman has colon cancer and, he's losing a lot of weight, having a hard time eating. They actually put a stent in because the tumor is inoperable because it's kind of interspersed between organs, so they can't easily remove it. So they put a stent in there to bypass some of the digestion so that at least some nutrition can be absorbed. So they were looking for nutritional counseling, and so he's a father. So actually, his son-in-law brought him. His daughter called for the appointment, and his son-in-law brought him. So you can see there's like this sort of thing, like, and they've gotten some advice, like to give him small meals every so often, but he's not doing it because the food isn't really moving through his system, so he doesn't feel hungry. So we were talking about like, setting an alarm every 4 hours just to remind him to eat something, because on his own, he probably will not. His body won't tell him, because things aren't moving very fast in his digestive system. Anyway, that kind of case seems very related to this kind of chart. Yeah. So anyway, so the third house lord is Venus. Let's see. We have the Sun D moon there in Vishaka, aspected by debilitated Sun, Mercury, Mars. So again, aggression, competition, siblings and neighbors. It's a pretty challenged chart here. Also, like the lord of third house has gone 6 houses away, so there are acute issues with siblings and neighbors, even if it's not chronic. but looks like it's chronic here. It's so also lack of supporting rivals. So this could really be putting the squeeze basically on siblings, squeeze being put on siblings or onto siblings or neighbors or that sort of thing. Another thing that came up that crossed my mind that fits this chart quite well is on the radio. They announced that the World Food Kitchen has stopped providing meals to has been forced to stop providing meals to people in Gaza. So because of the blockade going on there, a lot of people just don't have access to food or meals or anything. And the World Food Kitchen is a nonprofit led by Jose Andres, a Spanish American man who, if you watched one of my last videos, I think my Scorpio video, I talked about chefs because there's this, I like to watch video stuff. And so there's a relatively new episode or series called Chef's Table Legends. And I was talking in the Scorpio video about, what's her name? Alice Waters, who runs Chez Panisse in Berkeley, California. She's a major chef who not only is a great chef, but she was very transformative. That's why I was talking about her in the Scorpio video, because I don't know exactly, I don't have a birth time for her, so I don't know her rising sign, but she has Mars aspecting Scorpio. So her Scorpio house is very strong because Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So Mars is aspecting its own sign. But she's also been very transformative where she set up these she basically set up these farm to table. She basically innovated the farm to table movement, like what's happening, definitely United States, if not, I think all over the world. But she also got into public schools where they were teaching kids about gardening and farming and food generally, like food right from the ground and the tree, not just process and stuff like that. And then she is, her organization has been a part of 6,500 schools in the United States, so very transformative. But Jose Andres was another chef that was talked about in that same video. That's why I'm bringing it up. And again, you can see problems. This could be problems feeding people here. Delays and obstacles feeding people here. So his organization, he set up the World Food Kitchen, where he'll go in with his crew and whatever equipment or whatever, and he'll go into places like hurricanes, natural disasters, or wars and stuff, and just feed people, because that's what he does. As a chef, feeds people. So that was very impressive. I was like, wow. I mean, both. I mean, that's why they're chef's tables legends. So you might, if you're into that kind of stuff, you might watch that video. But when I was looking at his chart, and I don't have a birth time for him either, but he has Rahu and Jupiter in Pisces. Okay, and in this chart we have Rahu and Jupiter in Pisces. He also has Mars in Scorpio. He has Mars in Scorpio, like Alice Waters, so very transformative energy. And his Mars in Scorpio is in Uttara. So Uttara is the nakshatra after Vishaka. Vishaka is the victory at all costs. Uttara is the victory through building alliances. So I was just like, wow, that's so perfect. So if you didn't watch the Scorpio video, you've got or if you did, here's another example of a strong Scorpio house person. And again, I don't know if that's his luggage, but I was like, wow, it's amazing that both of those chefs, and again, cooking, I would imagine for a chef, they would have potentially a very strong moon, because moon is about hospitality and food, and or probably both. Mars, because Mars is a fiery, innovative, type, uh, you know, um, uh, planet. So when you get food, moon with Mars, fire, you get cooked food chef. Okay, essentially. So yeah, so I thought, wow, his chart also, and we will have Mars and Scorpio in a few hours after this specific time, because moon will be in Scorpio, and then you'll get Jupiter and Mars in Scorpio. So I was like, oh wow, look how that all fits together. So then the fourth house here, fourth house lord is Mars. We talked about that. It's aspected by Jupiter and Venus. So besides indicating home, family, lineage, property, mom, the fourth house also indicates secondary education, like college level, university level, not graduate level or PhD level. But You can see, again, the Lord Mars has gone to the 12th house. It's debilitated. There's probably some loss of stability at home and seeking some new energy because Jupiter's in Mrigashirsha, or seeking some new balance. This could also be like a study abroad program, for some people. Balancing, healing. It could be loss of or through mom, advisor, lineage, but also some sort of honoring energy here because Jupiter and Venus, when you get those two planets together, like they're going to bring a lot of good and again, socializing and generosity. Like usually it's like a party type energy. So this is like, I think, Mother's Day going on here, like honoring the losses, given by mom, and nurturing and stabilizing, that's the mother energy, right? Nurturing and stabilizing others, right? That goes at her pusha energy of Mars. So, yeah, so you can see kind of Mother's Day energy here as well. With the fourth house, again, this might also potentially be a good time for education because the fourth house, especially once moon shifts here in a couple hours, the fourth house will be a lot stronger with Mars aspecting its own sign. With Jupiter and Venus, that'll look pretty nice. But then also the ninth house here, Sun exalted, flanked by Jupiter and Venus, Shubha Kartari, Shubha Bhadrapada. The ninth house is higher education. So whether it's, if this was a person's chart, they probably had multiple degrees, is what I'm seeing here. A lot of education. Probably and then with the sun here, either in medicine and or like administration, maybe both. Frankly, maybe both. Like hospital administration could be. So yeah, so let's look at the other houses now in the next slide. Okay, so same stuff on the left, stuff on the right are just my notes for the other houses. So fifth house lord is Jupiter. It will be aspecting its own house soon once Jupiter moves into Gemini in a couple days, and that'll make the fifth house stronger. Right now, Jupiter is 6 houses away, so there's probably been some problems with children, especially because Saturn is aspecting there, so it's going to bring obstacles and delays to kids. Also advising, also performance, any kind of performance or stage type work, because fifth house represents that kind of stuff. But once Jupiter shifts into Gemini, fifth house here for Leo Lugna is going to be stronger. So then you might get spiritual advising. Also, Leo rising people might be thinking about having kids or might be getting pregnant potentially because you have Jupiter aspecting its own sign, the fifth house. Jupiter represents children as a planet, and then the fifth house of children is going to be super strong. So, there might be children on the way, although there can also be obstacles and delays because you still have the Saturn aspecting. And right now, Saturn's aspecting both the house and the planet. So right now, probably a lot of problems having children. This might also be this Rahu, Saturn, Venus in the 12th house. 12th house, 12th constellation of Pisces in the 8th house. So there could be like unusual structures and growths and sexual system of this Leo rising person preventing pregnancy. But once Jupiter slips into Gemini, then Saturn will only be on the house. It won't be on the planet and the house both. So there might be a possibility here. There will probably still be some problems, though. But they might also get cleared up because, by the end of May, Venus will be out of there, out of the 8th house, and then Rahu will be out of that house, and you'll just have Saturn, sitting in the 8th house, which will still probably cause some issues, but, better than what it is now, potentially. So there might be structural, physical issues here. There could also, Saturn can indicate fear, skepticism, doubt. So there could be like, pessimism related to children generally, or specifically if you're trying, it could be like, getting frustrated trying because you've had all these blockages here, physical and it looks like psychological, to make that happen. So, and the 6th house lord here, 6th house lord Saturn. It's aspecting, what is this? Wait. So, the 6th house lord has gone to the 8th house. So, acute issues becoming chronic, like stuff you thought was going to probably clear up. It's just like lingering. Like, when are we going to get over the hump, man? Like, kind of that kind of energy. You do also have Jupiter and Mars aspecting here. So there might be some new action in establishing like a new balanced or nurturing routine to help deal with the stress that's going on here. This will also indicate pretty strong enemies because Mars is exalted in Capricorn in the 6th house here. Um, maybe seeking some sort of legal resolution or restitution here. And again, acute issues becoming chronic. So it's been a slog for a while. The 7th house I've been talking about, 7th house Lord Saturn's gone to the 8th house. So there's problems with independent business, partnerships, personal and professional. It's aspected by Mars currently, and soon will be Rahu. So the the Lord of the 7th has gone to a negative house. You've got a malefic on it. Probably saved a little bit because you have two natural malefics, natural benefics on it, Jupiter and Venus. So at least for the moment, that's helping a touch, not much probably. And then Rahu is going to be moving in there. So you're going to have two malefics on the 7th house, and then the 7th house Lord's gone to a negative house. So that's going to be a lot of trying to build relationships, but probably with a lot of problems as well, frankly. So then, so trying to build new partnerships, but may not be getting too far. It could, especially when you have Mars and Rahu together, that can be a very, Rahu on its own can be a very obsessive, compulsive type energy. With Mars, you get even more of a kind of drive, Mars and Rahu together, just being obsessive about something. But Rahu and Mars together can also be like a wild goose chase. So this could be like trying really hard to get relationships going, but like not really getting that far or not really being that true also because Rahu is a hidden, unexpected energy. So it's like it might be a bit superficial, you know. And then the other thing is Rahu is in a nakshatra of Purva Bhadrapada. And it will be also in Purva Bhadrapada for a while in Aquarius once it moves there. And Purva Bhadrapada is the front leg of the funeral pyre. So that's just smoke and flames and destruction without any objectivity. So this could be, even more, fire on the, fuel on the fire, so to speak, unfortunately. This could also be like ambitious, like angry, ambitious partners would be. Especially once, Rahu moves in there and Mars is going to shift into Ashlesha pretty soon. This is going to be pretty aggressive, like partnerships and, and partners becoming enemies potentially. Yeah, it's looking kind of pretty tough for Leo rising folks, looks like, relationship wise. At least that house for the next bit of time. So then the 8th house we've been talking about, Jupiter aspects its own, exalted Venus, Saturn, Sunday, Rahu, and Purva Bhadrapada. And, again, restructuring routine, enemies, partnerships, seeking advice, contemplating, and reviving unusual structure. Advisors, we've been talking about this stuff, trying to dig out of a deep hole. Yeah, that's pretty true. And then again, more on the medical side, unusual neuromuscular issues like cramps, potentially growth in the sexual elimination systems like colon cancer, or like especially Venus there, maybe like a polyps or, fibroids, endometriosis, that sort of thing. It doesn't have to be, so just because I said the C word doesn't mean, you gotta be careful there. So, but there might be some like benign growths going on there that are causing problems of different kinds, if not just pain, Um, besides maybe blocking childbirth, or making it more difficult. Again, this could also be organizing a medical plan. Um, yeah, of some kind, not just like nutritional counseling. This could also potentially be for some people inheritance because the 8th house is also inheritance and other people's money. So you can see like Rahu, at least for Leo rising, has been in 8th house for a year and a half. So, and Venus has been there, exalted there since, I believe, February. It's been there for like 4 months, a really long time. And then Jupiter, and then once Venus went into um, Pisces here, that's when we started up with the parivartana between Jupiter and Venus. So there's probably been some big drive towards, at least for Leo rising, this could be like campaign building or campaign financing and stuff like that. So there was a big push for that, and now it's like looks like things are drying up, things aren't going as well as expected, and now it's going to be a big push for more relationships, bringing more people on board, that kind of thing. Ninth house, again, ninth house Lord Mars. We have an exalted Sun, Mercury. Trouble with health because Sun represents general health. This could be a doctor's consult. Speaking with a doctor. Father, problems with father, authority, guru, and losing strength. This could be literal or figuratively. Making decisions, communications. Oh, that patient I mentioned who came in for a nutritional consult recently. I don't have an exact birth time for them, but I looked at their chart, and they have, through parivartana, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars in Pisces. So they have basically like almost this kind of setup in Pisces. And it's always amazing to me, even when people come to see me for medical stuff. When I look at their charts, usually their birth chart, because I don't bring it up, I don't necessarily talk about it in a medical visit, but unless they specifically want to set aside time for an astrological consult. But yeah, it's always amazing to me. Even the people coming in for medical stuff, their birth charts very often look like the current sky pattern. And we used to talk about that in classes and stuff. It's like there's something about divine timing and like the divine appointment. Like when somebody shows up at your door, I guess for either medical consults or astrological consults, it's usually because it's again sort of a divine timing thing. So yeah, that was kind of blows me away. But his chart, I was like, oh, look, all this stuff going on in Pisces, and there you go. Um, this could also be again like on a higher education, like maybe public nutrition or like health nutrition or something like that. Some version of that. Then the 10th house here, 10th house Lord is Venus, aspects its own sign through parivartana, Jupiter, and we've got Saturn aspecting wise, practical advising through restructuring deep, unusual issues. We've been talking about that. Then the 11th house, Lord Mercury, again, improving groups, social, some sort of social executive decisions, improving groups, rescuing groups, and, socializing and income and that sort of thing. Then the 12th house, Lord is the moon. It's in a negative house. We've got a debilitated Mars there. So losses through actions, and again, maybe parents, because Mars is the lord of both 4th house and 9th houses, which are related to mom and dad. Okay, so there you go. Let's take a look at the amshas, so divisional charts, and see what else we get. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the subzodiacs, also known as the amshas, subdivisional charts. So these are derived, in case you don't know, by slicing and dicing the main chart, the natal chart, into smaller and smaller pieces, like each house. So that's how they derive these charts. And then each chart is related to more specific areas of a life, somebody's life. So these are used mostly for timing. So that's why on each of these next slides, I have at the top the dasha period. So the planets that were running, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, and then switching to Jupiter, Venus, Mercury on 8th of October, 2025. And those are the planets I've circled in each of these charts. So when we're looking at those planets, we're looking at are the planets that we're running and shifting to and from better or worse for each of these charts. That's primarily what we're looking for. You can get some additional information, but you always want to bring whatever you find in these subcharts and integrate them with the main chart. Okay, so just FYI. So the charts on here, oh, I need to change the top of the title here because I switched some of the charts around. Let me do that before I forget. Okay, so I fixed the middle of this. So now it's career and income, so it's correct now. Okay, so the top chart is the Dashamsha D10 for career. And you can see all of the active dasha period grahas or planets are in positive houses. So that's, nice. it would seem like there would be like a good, kind of career gains and stuff like that. There's also a parivartana exchange of houses between Venus and Jupiter, between the second house and the seventh house. So again, a lot of counseling energy, as those are the two counseling planets. Also, it's really, really strong seventh house of independent business. So, yeah, could also be picking up finance here, food here, inner circle, all very strong. Saturn, Jupiter, Venus are all in the lugna through aspects. So, yeah, and all the expositors are strong because Jupiter is in a sign of Venus, Saturn's in a sign of Jupiter, Venus is in a sign of Jupiter, Mercury is in a sign of Moon, and it's with the Moon as well. So this is a very strong chart, which again, it's not too surprising given the natal chart here. There can be, I would say, there can be tension with partners though, because when Jupiter meets up with Venus in the seventh house, it's going to be a very strong house. But the thing is, when you look at the subcharts, Jupiter is a sole enemy of Venus. You only use that in the subchart. You don't use that concept in the main chart. So there can be conflict. The other thing is that Mars is aspecting the seventh house, kind of like it is in the main chart. So there's, potentially conflict here, although we're not running Mars currently. What else? And then Mercury, when we switch from Saturn because Saturn is going to bring, as aspecting Lugna here, that's going to bring delays and obstacles to the whole chart. When we switch to Mercury, Mercury is in the house, 11th house with Swan Moon. So public action, advice, organization, finance, public finance, that's kind of the stuff we've been talking about. But career-wise, it looks fairly strong, and getting stronger once you move into Mercury, period. Then the second chart here, Ekadamsha D11 for income. This is also for public support. So especially since we've talked about, elected officials, whenever you look at elections, you want to look at somebody's D11. So here, Mercury's not well placed. It's in a negative house. But what did I say here? Oh, there's a parivartana between Venus and Mars. So that's going to bring Venus into its own sign in the ninth house of, again, government, authority, father, institutions, that sort of thing. So especially when you have parivartana between the 10th and the ninth houses, that can usually indicate like government or institutional work or advice, or at least a subcontractor for the government, that kind of thing. And then you have Jupiter aspecting both the Lugna and the ninth house here. So you're going to get both of the advisory planets in the ninth house. So this could be like government advising. You do also have Jupiter is karako bhava in the fifth house, because Jupiter represents children and the fifth house represents children. There's could be some, trouble or loss with children, which we saw in the main chart as well. But in terms of income, there may be, let me see, third house. There could be a little bit of loss, because of Saturn on. There might be some, a little bit of loss with Mercury, but overall income, is fairly strong here. Public supports, Jupiter, Saturn. Yeah, again, it looks like there's public support here because, again, with the parivartana, Venus and Mars, the ninth house is going to be strong. The 11th house is also going to be strong because Jupiter's aspecting its own sign. So yeah, I would say this is probably like the strong D11 energy that like elected public officials would like to have, frankly. Although there's, some issues here. Probably the biggest one is Jupiter Karka. Yeah. So there again might be trouble and losses with children. And not always children, you don't have to be that literal, but it could be like future generations. You can think about it that way. Yeah. So then on this slide, we have assets and education. At the top, the Chaturtamsha D4 for assets, and then the second chart, Siddhamsha D24 for education. So, yeah, I mentioned it looks like there are financial difficulties in the main chart, and we're seeing it here as well. The D4 as assets. So mostly movable assets, or even like large investment portfolios would fall into this category. And you can see we have a Vargota Malagna here. So this is also a Leo rising chart here. So that means that this chart is important. Yeah. And that's why, like, again, the Mercury uh, with the exalted sun in the ninth house, and Mercury being the lord of the second house of assets, like sorting through assets, human and, tangible assets and stuff like that. So it looks like, again, it's an important financial piece, to this full moon. But we see some more trouble here. So Saturn and Mercury are not well placed. So, mantra sub periods here is not the greatest. Also, a Balarishta yoga, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 out of 9 planets in negative houses. There's some protection here because Mercury again is with the Swan moon, and there's a parivartana between Jupiter and Saturn. There's actually a double parivartana. So there's a Jupiter Saturn parivartana and a Jupiter Rahu parivartana. So you actually have Jupiter Rahu Saturn in both the 7th house and the 8th house, which is pretty wild. Yeah, it's pretty wild. So I would see this as like strong indications of like assets are partners, and partners and their money are the assets, the real assets on the table here. Like that's which is essentially what I was saying with the main chart, is that especially for a Leo Lugna, probably lost their constituency, problems with the political decisions that were made, and now trying to recover the losses, not just people who've left them, but, their pocketbooks and wallets, so that they can continue doing what they're doing. So you can see that there's also going to be this like very obsessive energy going on here, with trying to rebuild partnerships and other people's money, frankly. So yeah, Mars and Sun, and you can see here like Mercury again, the lord of the 11th house and the second house. So loss of income, loss of public support, advice, with the Mercury sub-period Antara. And then the Mars and Sun in the 6th house, so acute issues with leadership, because again, Mars is the ruler of the 9th house of government authority, potentially, or father, and then Sun is the Lugnatia, lord of the whole chart. So, and those are the 2 leadership planets. Luckily, Mars is exalted, so at least there's a little strength there, but, yeah, it's like problems with leadership. Then the Sadamsha D24. Well, this is pretty nice, which again is not too surprising given the main chart of like Jupiter, Venus aspecting the 4th house, and then exalted Sun flanked by Jupiter and Venus in the 9th house. Pretty good time for education, frankly. Losses, of course. So that Mars, that's there will be losses, but this is like losses through support. So this might be the Mars in the 12th house in the main chart. That could be like financial loans, like student loans, or maybe if mom and dad are paying the bill, maybe it's like a loss to them, but like it's a good sort of a good sort of loss. Like it's like a support, it's like a loss through supporting somebody else, that kind of thing. That's what we're seeing. You can see the Sadamsha here. It's pretty phenomenal. All the grahas are well placed. You have a Saraswati yoga that'll bring creativity and education. Jupiter and Venus, Jupiter and Mercury and parivartana. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Because Jupiter and Mercury, the 2 education planets, they're both super strong. That also makes the Lugna strong because Jupiter's aspecting its own sign. But then you have Jupiter, Sun, Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, Venus, Moon, Mercury, all aspecting the Lugna. That in and of itself tells you this is an important chart, even though it's not a Vargota Lugna. When you have a lot of planets aspecting the Lugna of a subchart, that indicates it's really important. This is going to be an excellent student with multiple degrees, which you already sort of got from the main chart, but this is just to like reedifying. So, yeah, Mercury essentially is swa, Jupiter is swa through parivartana, Saturn is swa, like, or not swa, but exalted in the 11th house. I mean, it's like, again, the only thing is that Saturn may bring trouble through like loans and financing a little bit because Saturn is aspecting the 8th house of other people's money. So, but it looks like there's some protection there. Yeah. So again, it's maybe the financing is a little bit tricky, but good school, good grades, good, all the good stuff. It's just probably the financing might be a little bit tricky, or a little bit of a drawback, but otherwise, like really good education energy here. So in this slide, now we're getting into like relationships. So Navamsha D9, spouse and partnerships at the top, and then Dragana D3 for siblings. So at the top, all grahas well placed, but you can see there's a Venus. Oh, look, Venus karako bhava nasha and a Jupiter karako bhava nasha. So it looks like the spouse, of the native has trouble with spouse and, family relationships, frankly. Yeah, because of the two Karka here, so with Venus and Jupiter. So there is a Saraswati yoga here, so creativity, education. Since Saturn is aspecting its own sign in the 10th house, it's probably a really strong, 9 to 5 work type person. Also, probably an advisor. Yeah, there can also be, I would say, trouble with parents, because Saturn is Lord is running right now, and it's the Lord. It's in the 4th house of mom, and it's Lord of the 9th house of dad. This could also be, I would say, an ideal leader, like maybe a little bit, I say, like not super courageous or confident. But I think an ideal leader, and again, an advisor, I keep getting, because we're going to have Jupiter's aspecting the Lugna, Venus is aspecting the Lugna into its own sign. Those are the two advisor planets. Jupiter's in an advisory position in the 5th house. The Saturn, though, again, it's like creating some delays and obstacles. So probably a spouse will be doing a little bit better once they move into the Mercury sub period here, because Mercury is Swan, the 2nd house. So more communication probably coming from them. Then the Drake and a D3 for siblings. We have another Virgo to Lugna. So important chart, which again, the 3rd house on the natal chart was pretty challenged. And we're seeing it again here. Jupiter, Venus, Saturn not well placed. So a lot of issues here. Jupiter's debilitated as well. Jupiter and Saturn in parivartana, that'll help a little bit, but not a whole lot. So issues with the relationships, because Saturn is again, Saturn and Rahu and Jupiter are in the 8th house again for a Leo Lugna. And Saturn is the lord of the 11th house of partnerships. So the other thing is that this Jupiter-Saturn, Jupiter and Saturn are lords of the 5th house of children, 6th house of enemies, 7th house of partnerships, and then 8th house of long-term issues. Like you can see, this is just like a ongoing problematic mess, frankly, with relationships, children, health. Yeah, also with Saturn and Jupiter together, Rahu, this could be like difficulty staying optimistic. Sun and Mars are the two strongest planets here, especially Mars. But that may also mean the siblings like fairly argumentative, which I would guess because Mars and Saturn were both aspecting the 3rd house. So, yeah, clearly there's some issues, pretty deep and long-standing issues here with siblings. Again, whenever they run Mars, that might be a nice time for them because that's their strongest planet in the B3, but otherwise there might be ongoing problems. And on this slide, we have the Septamsha D7 for children, the Dwadashamsha D12 for parents and grandparents. D7 children, all grahas are well placed. Saraswati yoga. So a lot of creative energy in the family looks like. Jupiter Venus parivartana. So just like the parents have Jupiter, both the parents, you know, looks like have parivartana yoga. So and the kids do as well. So a lot of counseling energy, a lot of counselors in the family. Also education in the family. Yeah, then Saturn exalted. What is this? What did I write? Saturn exalted in the second house. Mercury swa. So, with the party, all the planets are very strong here. So that's pretty nice. Again, especially once Jupiter shifts into Gemini and a few days after this full moon, that'll be the fifth house on the natal chart will be stronger. This is also potentially a good sign, again, in terms of these positive planets being strong. If somebody tried to get pregnant, then there's more likelihood, not just based on the natal chart, but based on the D7, so that's pretty good. There may be troubles with some speech and mood because of the second house here and the eighth house here. Might be fairly aggressive, competitive, ambitious, which we were seeing some of that in the main chart as well. So it looks like they're picking up some of that from the native. Because the Sun and Mars, Mars is Swa, Sun is exalted in Aries in the eighth house. That's going to be a very competitive mindset, deep psychology. Moon is there, but Saturn is there as well. So Sun and Saturn are soul enemies. So there's some tension there. And then Saturn's, even though Mars is Swan, Sun is exalted, Saturn's debilitated. So, and then Saturn, its second house being the speech. So I could see some problems with speech and mood for kids, even though educated, creative, And again, Jupiter and Venus and Jupiter are not only parivartana, but they're in parivartana in the fourth house of higher education, the ninth house of like advanced education. So, yeah. So, but a lot of like really smart kids who are good at school, like they have a lot of mood and self-esteem issues and stuff like that, I think. So, because they might be good at school, but then other things, might be harder for them, or they might be sensitive sometimes. Then the Dwadashamsa D12 here, parents, grandparents, all the grahas are well placed. The thing though is that we have Moon and Sun on the Rahu Ketu axis. That can indicate loss and or divorce of parents. So we were seeing in the main chart that Mars rules the fourth house of mom and the ninth house of dad, and that's gone. It's debilitated in the 12th house, so losses through parents. This could be part of that. There could also be mental health issues here because, again, we have a debilitated Saturn on Jupiter, so really unstable optimism. And then we have Mars debilitated in the 10th house here on Mercury. And then there's a parivartana between Moon and Mercury. So both Moon and Mercury are going to be on the Rahu Ketu axis. That can give mental health issues and stuff like that. So they might be fairly strict parents though, because Saturn's exalted in the Lugna here, or traditional, or maybe from other countries. It looks like there's lost parents, as in the natal chart. So that's recreated here. And on this slide we have health stuff. So at the top, D6 acute issues, and then the D8 chronic issues, and D27 strength and resilience. So in the top, Saturn and Venus are not well placed, and you can see we're kind of getting this Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, Venus conglomeration again, related to the 6th house and 8th house and 12th house. So acute issues, long-term issues, losses, acute becoming chronic, and again, unusual maybe sexual or elimination structures, pretty similar to the main chart. Then the D8, Mercury's not well placed, but it is Swa, that helps a bit. And it's aspected by Saturn, so that's going to bring it down a bit. And then it's going to be in a mature Sankhya Yoga because it's got Ketu, Rahu, Mars in the 8th house from it, so, or 8th house. So there's still challenges to Mercury, even though it's Swa, let's put it that way. so on, like decision making, and logic analysis potentially. Sun and Mars are in parivartana, so a lot of inflammation potentially. Venus has 3 malefics on it, and we're running, Venus here. Um, so that's going to be problems with Venus, Venusian things. So usually sexual system, also relationships, especially because Venus is in the 11th house of clubs, group, society. There might be some social issues here, like maybe social anxiety. The 8th house here, there's 4 malefics. Yeah, so again, unusual long-term health issues going on here. At least Jupiter's exalted. That's nice. Yeah, but you can see even though the planets are generally well placed, there's still some, pretty deep ongoing stuff happening. Then the D27, Virgo to Malagna. So this is also important. So Venus is not well placed, but it's in parivartana with Saturn. That'll make them both stronger. There's also a parivartana between Jupiter and Mercury. So, and remember the chidra grahas. Chidra graha can literally indicate like places of surgery. Since we're running Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, those 3 are chidra grahas, there could be a lot of injuries or surgery procedures going on here. And especially because there's this parivartana, it's going to be somebody who's like strong, but like, always has something going on. Like it's always complicated. Like, especially during the current entra of Saturn. Like Mercury's going to be better, but we're running Venus, and we're going to have this like Rahu, Venus, Saturn conjoining going on again in the 3rd house, not in the 3rd, in the 6th house. But from there, Saturn aspects the 8th house. So again, you kind of keep getting this Saturn, Rahu, Venus energy in the 8th house. You do have Jupiter aspecting that 8th house as well. So actually, you get all 4 of those planets: Rahu, Venus, Saturn, Jupiter again in the 8th house. And Jupiter is a sole enemy of Venus, and Venus is a sole enemy of Rahu. So, again, even though things are probably okay, it's like always something going on. It's complicated. It may be the kind of thing, especially during the Venus bhukti, where just it's just an ongoing issue and it's hard to resolve, So the 6th, 8th, 12th houses are similar, kind of configuration as the main chart. But there's probably some good advice, education, advocacy going on, because Jupiter's strong, Mercury's strong, education planets. And then Jupiter comes back to its own sign in the 5th house of counseling. So, and then Venus is in its own sign in Taurus, where there's Sun and Saturn and Jupiter. So again, you have Jupiter, Venus, Saturn in the 10th house again with Sun. So there's good advice, education, advocacy, but it's just like a lot of energy going on here. Always something going on. Yeah, but considering all that's going on, I think staying above the fray, it looks like. On this last slide here, we have spirituality and worship. So at the top, Panchamsha D5 for innate spirituality, and the Vimshamsha D20 for formal worship. At the top, Saturn and Mercury are not well placed. This is a Saturn-dominated chart. You can see Saturn's on Venus, Jupiter's debilitated. Saturn's on K2 Mercury, Saturn's on Sun. Moon is in a sign of Saturn, Jupiter and Venus are in a sign of Saturn, like very Saturn-dominated chart here. So obstacles and delays of all kinds. And Saturn's in the 12th house of losses and expenditures. Saturn is also on Mercury and influencing Mercury and Moon, the 2 mind planets. So worries, doubts, fears. Saturn is also on a Swa Sun in the 9th house. So issues with boss, authority, father. Yeah, this might be like somebody who can't really sort of organize themselves around any, consistent practice, or there's delays and obstacles to doing so. Then you can see, by contrast, the Vimshamsha D20 for formal worship, because again, we were picking up spiritual energy with that exalted sun in the 9th house. So, Here's your formal worship. Venus and Mercury are not well placed, but Venus is Swa. That'll protect things, and it's in the third house, so there'll be some positive change. Jupiter is exalted in the fifth house and aspecting its own sign and the lugna. So very strong chart during the Jupiter dasha for organized religion and worship. So this Jupiter Mahadasha that's going on here, this might be when somebody sort of finds religion or becomes very active in the church, temple, mosque, whichever organization they're part of, might even become a spiritual advisor themselves of some kind, like maybe Sunday school teacher. I don't know what level, but Jupiter is definitely going to be a very strong. We have Jupiter exalted in the D20, and we have Jupiter debilitated with Saturn in its Saturnian sign in the D5. So you can see there's a big contrast here. So when I was looking, so essentially all these, nothing too surprising coming from the amshas, but giving a bit more nuance and detail. I did do my counts like I usually do at the end of any sort of patterns that kept popping up. And the thing is, Saturn was on Venus a lot, half the charts, and Saturn was on Jupiter for most of the charts, or a lot of the charts, 6 out of 14 charts. And so the chart where Saturn was on Venus was the main chart, children, health, and spirituality. Okay. And again, the health and children part, especially with Saturn, Venus, Rahu together, again, and Saturn being the lord of the fifth house of children, like I could see that there could be problems with, again, the sexual system or childbirth or getting pregnant, that kind of stuff. Then Saturn on Jupiter happened in the main chart, assets, siblings, parents, strength, and innate spirituality. So kind of a little bit more, maybe not central, but still important. So again, finance, spirituality. So assets, I mean, the Jupiter is like a, again, banking, finance, and spirituality. That's Jupiter. And then siblings and parents, again, uh, yeah, it's just probably a hard time connecting there. And again, it looks like the siblings and parents have quite a bit of their own issues, that they're dealing with. So those relationships may not be the most supportive especially during the Jupiterian Mahadasha, main planetary period. Okay, so there you go. The full moon coming up May 12th. As always, thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. I appreciate your time and attention and interest, and also all the different ways that you guys support my work in the channel. So, liking, subscribing, sending in donations, sharing videos, posting comments. Yeah, it's great. So thanks so much for all of that. Again, all my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic Astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. For more famous birth charts, you can check out my birth charts archive list 2025 video. That's the updated version of the archive list. I do offer individual birth chart readings. If that's interesting to you, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more info. I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about other Vedic arts such as Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, yoga, homeopathy, and naturopathic medicine. And the name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too for you. So as always, thanks so much for stopping by. We hope, as always, that this talk was helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so until the next one, take good care. Namaste.